Hey everyone, we're Team 25, and our project is called Poetify. So what does Poetify do? The goal of Poetify is to take a review and turn it into a poem. More specifically, we want to keep some details from the original review, such as the sentiment of it, and keep those in the generated poem as well. As we can see here, if the review is positive, then ideally the poem we generate would also be positive. So why did we decide to do this project? Well, we found that it would be amusing whether the poem generated is good or bad. If the poem is successfully generated, we can compare and contrast it with the original. As you can see here, several topics are shared between the review and the poem. Both the review and the poem talk about the TV being what they needed and the TV being budget friendly. In the case of an unsuccessful poem, the poem is generally just completely off topic. We can see here that the review is about a TV, while the poem is about a restaurant and some people. Okay, so what's a potential use case for Poetify? Well, imagine you buy this TV, think it's a great TV, and you want to leave a 5-star review. You write up a review, but you feel that it does not have enough impact. What do? You Poetify it. You simply take your review and paste it into the window as the input, and as the output, you get back the poem. We can see both the poem and the review talk about the picture quality. We'll be going more in depth on this poem later in the presentation. Now I'm going to pass it off to Steven, who's going to be talking about the dataset.
Thank you, Percy. The datasets that we used were retrieved from Kaggle. In the beginning, we used poem datasets such as the haiku dataset shown here to generate simple poems with the given prompt. Our final model was trained with the Amazon Review and Poetry Foundation datasets, which are 30,000 and 15,000 values respectively. We used a large amount and variety of data. In earlier models, we trained our program with datasets of haikus, sonnets, and ballads to generate basic structured poems, and used reviews with labeled ratings and labeled sentiment with around 500 to 600,000 values each. For the final model, the Poetry Foundation and Amazon Review dataset were used to achieve our goal, as Percy mentioned, breaking down the original review into a summary and creating a poem with it. We ensured that the datasets we used were large and unbiased to prevent misleading and inaccurate generation. Data processing was done with scripts on Colab or Jupyter Notebook. We collected the raw data from online where there would sometimes be Unicode characters, and after formatting and labeling the data, it would then be split for training, validation, and testing. An example we have here is the Amazon reviews before and after processing. The labels 2 and 1 mean good and bad sentiment, followed by a summary or title of the review, then the review itself, and were formatted into 2 columns containing summary and text, which could then be passed into our program. Shown on the left is the current split for training, validation, and testing, and we aim to find more data and work towards a ratio of 60, 20, and 20 for the future.
Thanks, Stephen. All right, so since we don't have a data set of reviews and their associated poems, we need to take a few in-between steps. So the first thing we do is we have a summarizer, which summarizes the review, and then we have a generator, which takes the review title and generates a poetic review from it. So let's take a look at how the summarizer works. So the summarizer is a T5 transformer, which has around 60 million parameters. It has 6 hidden encoder and decoder layers with 8 attention heads per layer. And it has an encoder and a decoder section. And basically, we just use the pre-trained language model of the T5, and we fine-tune it on Amazon reviews and review titles. Okay, now for the generator, we use GPT-2. GPT-2 is a language model, which means it predicts the next word, the next most likely word, given all of the previous words. So we're going to leverage this. We use the small version, which has around 117 million parameters with 12 layers and 12 attention heads per layer. Now, how do we use this? So first off, we take the head, the pre-trained head, and we fine-tune it on review title, review pairs. So basically, since it's a language model, it learns that the next most likely words following the separator token are going to be a review, which is related to the title. Basically, once we have this review generator, we take it and we fine-tune it again, this time on poems. So we fine-tune it with the poem title, followed by a separator and the poem. And now what it learns is that When you have the poem title followed by a separator, the next most likely words are going to be a poem. All right, so that's how this works, and I'll pass it on to David to talk about our results.
Hello, my name is David, and I'll be going over the final results of our project. Let's go through the quantitative results first. Here is our training and validation loss graph, and as we can see, the losses decrease as the epochs increase. Next, let's look at the metrics we use. So we use Rouge to evaluate the accuracy of our summarizer model and Bleu to evaluate the generator model. Our Rouge score was 0.114 when evaluated on a review validation set. Our Bleu score was 0.16 when evaluated on a poem testing set. These scores were calculated using various Python libraries. So now let's look at the qualitative results. On the left is the input review, and on the right is the generated poem. Let's just look at this last little section. A great soundtrack, she sang to me as she flew from the window and sang to me with her little voice. I was silent on the hill, and the dark was chill. Her music I longed to hear. So the overall flow of the poem is very good, and as shown with the green highlighted text, the topic is retained, and as shown with the red highlighted text, the positive and peaceful sentiment is retained. How could we improve this model in the future? So we had a limited poetry data set, so we should have had more poems to train on. Also, we could have calculated the loss on the generated poems and not the titles and generated poems for a more accurate loss. So does Team 25 consider this project and model a success? Yes, because despite some setbacks, we were still able to generate some beautiful poems that retain topic and sentiment from the original input review.